Hey folks, and welcome to the Michael Rollins Show. We're still talking to Mr. Steele, and today we're talking about how ethics was born. So here's a question for you. How many motors has Mr. Steele designed? Better yet, why did Mr. Steele change the bearings on the Mr. Steele Motors V1 at the last minute? Those questions and more will be answered for you in today's episode. As I stated in the original episode, the Mr. Steele interview is available in its entirety with extra footage on the Patreon podcast tier that I've just recently set up. It's a $3 tier, and it gives you a link that you can put into a podcast app, which will then allow you to hear my interviews on a weekly basis. I highly recommend it. I think it's something that's going to be great. It's something a lot of people have asked for, and I hope that you truly enjoy it. The information for Mr. Steele and for my Patreon can be found in the links below, and they can also be found in the links at the end of the end of the interview. Without further ado, I present to you Mr. Steele and how ethics was born.
So,
okay.
First of all, when I left Rotor Riot, I had been working on a motor with Get FPV. Because at the time when I went on this Hawaii trip, this was in like 2015, I met Tim Nielsen. No, not that motor.
Not that one? Okay.
No. I went to Hawaii and met Tim Nielsen, the guy that owned FPV, Get FPV at the time.
Yeah.
And he was talking to me, and we were all flying Cobra 2205 or 2204 2300s at the time, which was like a motor that you probably don't even remember. And a little black Cobra motor, you remember those?
I actually, yeah. So we my son has them on his drone, and he loves them to death because they're smooth.
That's crazy, because like now everything, it went like smooth to shitty and then to smooth again. Like it was like a whole bump in the road for a lot of people were getting vibrating video from bad motors. But so we were flying Cobras, and like the people that were buying them, there was like a bad batch, and magnets started falling out of them. And I never had any problems because I fly the same gear for forever. So I had like a batch from, years ago, or not years, but 6 months ago at the time, and people are like buying new motors because they break them or they're getting into the hobby and the magnets are falling out of them. And I was a sponsored pilot for Cobra. And, ethically, I was like, is it good for me to be selling motors that are breaking on people? So I was like, even though I wasn't making any money, I just felt bad because it was like I'm selling this product and people are having a bad experience with it. And that's kind of how I've always felt about selling things. Like I'm not going to put my name or sell anything to anybody or use something that someone is going to end up buying because they see me using it and then it be shitty. That's the worst way to do business per se. It's just bad. It's bad juju. Like you don't.
Well, at the end of the day, you're trading on your name.
Yeah. So with it was all about building a reputation at the time. So if you did shitty things, you got a shitty reputation. So when I met Tim Nielsen, Cobra was having a problem, and I asked him if I could make a motor with him, and he was like, "Sure, we'll make a motor." I spent the next year trying to develop a motor, and it was supposed to be a 2205. It was going to be purple. It was going to have ceramic bearings. Is this ringing any bells?
Schizo motor.
So that's the motor.
Are you serious?
I developed that motor for a year.
Oh my gosh.
And then I finally got the motor after a year of waiting, because he basically, from what he told me, I don't know, this could be complete bullshit, but I think it's pretty accurate. He went to China and bought a warehouse and built a whole motor manufacturer because he was tired of going through T-Motor. Because T-Motor, I like the people at T-Motor, but they're really bad about fucking people over. So they'll basically, you tell them what you want, they're like, oh, yes, and they make it. And then before yours comes out, they've basically revised all the problems that yours has and made it better. And then they come out with a motor right before yours, and they say that, oh, well, yours had like production delay. But in reality, they were making a better motor to yours for themselves, and they put theirs out first, and then they put yours out. So, Vivian, I'm sorry, but it's a fucking known truth, and it's just people that know what I'm talking about are going to be like, what? Other people know about this? Because it's, it's a thing. Like, they just basically have fucked a lot of people over in the past. But anyways, with that motor, I spent a year on it, and at the end of the day, it was supposed to sell for $37, and I was supposed to make $2 because the retail price was $35, and it was like, who is going to buy a motor for $37? Regardless if I make any money at all and it sold for $35, who's going to buy a motor at $35? And Tim was like, well, your name's on it, so it'll sell. And I'm like, yeah, but it would sell 50 times better if it was $25. It'd be like volume over, high quality, high premium price. And he's like, well, it's an expensive motor and we spent a lot of time on it. And I was like, okay, well, let's pursue forward. So I got that motor and the magnets fell out of it. I literally put the motor on my quad and punched out, and every single magnet on all 4 motors fell out of the drone. And I was like, what is going on? I've been waiting a year for this, and all the magnets fell out. And he's like, oh, we're having glue problems. I'm like, you didn't think to fix the glue problem before you sent me the prototypes? He's like, oh, just super glue the motor magnets back in and you'll be okay. I spent like 2 hours super gluing the motor magnets back in, punched out again. Within 5 seconds, the motor magnets fell out again and were like scraping on the bottom of the base. So I couldn't even fly them. And I was like, well, first of all, the magnets fell out again. And second of all, it felt really underpowered considering what I was thinking I was going to get. And I got another prototype, flew it for like a day, magnets fell out again. It was very underpowered. On the third time, flew it again, magnets fell out again. On that time, I was like, look, I'm done. I've worked over a year on you guys with this. You can't get the thing right. I'm not about to go to like mass production with something that the motor magnets are falling out of on. So I gave up on it, just straight up walked away from it. And obviously it got, passed on, and they fixed the problem, and it ended up being a schizo motor, which, doesn't say anything bad about it. He ended up really liking the motor, and it's a good motor, but, it wasn't what I was looking for. But in that time, Trappy at the time, I was the first TBS sponsored pilot. I had been on TBS for like a year and a half at this point. This was like early 2016, sorry. And Trappy was like, hey, I got this company that I told them to make like 40 different motors, all different KVs, all different stator sizes, and I have all the data. Do you want to see the data sheets? And I was like, yeah. So I looked at all the data sheets, and I picked 2, 2206 and 2306, and they sent them to me. And I flew them, fell in love with the 2306, and
now
it was
I can hold this up.
Yeah. And I was like, that is the motor I want. And I took them to Drone Nationals 2016 and flew them in the freestyle event. And at the time, I was flying for SMC, which is a battery company. I used to be on Thunder Power, and then I left Thunder Power for SMC because I felt like it was a better value for a pack. And we had been developing a version 2 of their really good battery with the SMC guy for like at least 6 months. I had maybe 50 plus weird battery shapes. We were trying really flat batteries and like really square batteries and all kinds of different shapes to try to get the dissipation of heat to be better than like the standard rectangle. And anyways, those motors killed my brand new batteries. I had 3 brand new like production models that were about to go in production because I had signed off on them, but they were so low internal resistance that when you punched out, these motors are so powerful it just killed the battery immediately.
Wow.
So within 3 cycles, all of these batteries were completely dead. You could charge them to 17 volts and do a full throttle punch out, and they would go to like 8 volts on first punch out. So I was like, well, the motors are great, but they're killing batteries, and these batteries are really great, but they're getting killed. So obviously people with racing setups with super high KV are going to kill them really easily, so that doesn't make me look good. So I ended up talking to that guy, ended up leaving SMC, going back to Thunder Power, because we worked out some kind of deal where they actually had the batteries that I wanted, and they weren't $50 a pop like they used to be when I was sponsored by Thunder Power. And I told them to put a different magnet in the motor, which is an N48 magnet, a weaker magnet, and it ended up being like the perfect setup. So that's how the V1 was created. And when the V1 actually went to production, like in a nutshell, I made really good money off of it because it was a really high quality product. The margins were good because it was a direct relation. Like Trappy, literally, the manufacturer is his. So there was no middleman like taking a cut. It was just like, here's what it's doing. Here's the numbers. Here's whatever the percentage we worked out that I would make, and it ended up being like really good. And it started putting money in my pocket, and I wasn't having to do anything. And I was like, holy shit, this is like how you do it. You make good products that people buy, and then you can make a living doing this. So that was kind of my first taste of, you know, something that worked. And after a year of the V1 coming out, the V2 came out, and or not the V2. V2 didn't come out. I was trying to make other products. I made the earbud and like a couple other things, and it eventually came to where I could only do so much by myself. And I realized that, you know, after talking to Trappy, he's like, you got to scale up if you want to make, you know, a bigger company or a bigger name for yourself. You're gonna have to bring more people on, and that's kind of hard to do because you give away some control. And I'm very like adamant about everything has to be perfect, or I'm not going to put my name on it. So with ethics, it was like a really hard thing to bring in other people and let them kind of take over part of this vision that I had. So I brought in Noelle and Snake and Eric Konasty, and we kind of started ethics as a group. And then eventually, like, things changed, and I kind of narrowed it down to just me and Eric and Trappy as a tripod. And we're the owners of the company, and yeah, it's just like trying to make the best products you possibly can. I have hands-on every single project that goes through there, and it's all directly through TBS, and that's how Ethics is basically like a sister company to TBS. And it's basically the Mr. Steel brand without my mustache on it, pretty much. And Ethics, and Eric has a lot of cool ideas that he brings to the table. And then we collab with TBS to make certain products as well. So, you know, we have some stuff that's very much TBS influenced, but because Ethics has a reputation for certain like premium product, then, you know, we might add our little side to it, and then all of a sudden it becomes a different product. So that's how Ethics got started. And that's what it is.
That's a great, it's actually a great story. And I'm curious, you know, when you think about ethics now, when you look back on it, like, what's the thing that gets you the most excited?
Mainly when I see people just like out in the field that have my gear, like that have ethics gear. It's really cool to see people that are excited about the gear that you've spent so much time and hard-earned time, and just a lot of physical frustration trying to get perfect. And when you see it out in the world, you're like, people actually like this, and it does change the impact of how people are experiencing the hobby. And that's really what I'm going for when I make a product, is like, yeah, anybody can make a motor and put their name on it. Hundreds of pilots have done this. It's not a new thing. Is it actually changing the experience of how people are dealing with these products? Yes, maybe because it's a special KV that nobody else offers, or it's a special stator size, or it's a special color. Those things don't matter to me. It's more along the lines of, is this something that is like legitimately going to make my life easier? And if I'm frank, every product that I develop is for me. I don't develop products for people. I develop shit for me. Okay. So when I think of something cool that I want, I make a product. It's not like, oh man, this will sell really well, let's make that. No, it's, man, my fucking toolkit sucks, I need a new toolkit. And I, you know, think of the coolest shit I can think of, and obviously, you know, what I want probably costs 5 times as much to make. So, you know, there's some compromises that are made just because people don't want to pay $300 for an Alcantara padded toolkit. But at the same time, you know, I'm trying to bring to the table things that are usable in the real world, and also things that people want because it's like a really cool addition to their kit. And that's like kind of why our motto is refining FPV. We're not reinventing anything. We're taking things that already exist and modifying them in a way, and it might even be very subtle. And like, I've been accused of some people are like, oh, your head strap is a clone of the Hot Dog FPV head strap. Well, you know, I did get some of his head straps and look at them, and I was like, wow, this is great, but I would change this and this and this to make it better. And I did that, and then I was considered cloning, so we just started paying him a royalty. We're like, hey, look, dude, we're not trying to copy you. It's literally like, this is what we want, and you don't make it, so I made it, and now you're mad at me, so let's just, you know, I'll pay you X amount of dollar per strap that we sell, and you get it up front. Like, there's no harm, no foul. But, you know, since that strap sold so well, there's been some he doesn't like us because our strap sells really well. I don't know. So we modified our strap, and now we don't have to worry about that. So it's just funny how, you try to make something better, but then people are like, oh, that's my intellectual property. And it's like, you cloned this. This is a Fat Shark strap. All you did is make it thicker. And now someone is taking your intellectual property that you stole from someone else, and now it's yours because you make a living off of it. It's a very difficult, slippery slope to get onto. So when it comes to like products, I just, I make what I think is going to make my life easier. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, then I don't bring it out to the world, and it just dies in the prototype stage. So
what can you talk about things that have died in the prototype stage, or do you?
Well, so the thing is like in the beginning, I tried to set up. Well, so when I left Rotor Riot and started Ethics, the reason Ethics is called Ethics is because I felt like I was unethically treated at Rotor Riot. So I named the company Ethics as like a fuck you to ethical, like, business, basically. So when I started the company, I was like, all right, we need to figure out a way to bring pilots on where we can pay them based on what they do. So, I wanted to have like this tiered system where, if you make a product from start to finish, you get 25% of the profit, which is a hell of a lot more than anyone else is going to offer you. So say the product, $10, and we sell it for 20, and the pilot would get, that 10 in the middle, they'd make $2.50, which is, so they have to do nothing. They do nothing, basically. They just get a check every month for however many weeks. They obviously had to start the project, but they have no skin in the game. They don't have to pay for it. They don't have to do anything other than like help develop it. Well, the problem with that is, and I don't want to sound like conceited or anything, but a lot of the ideas that people were bringing to the table, they didn't have enough experience to really bring something that would sell. Like, there's like things that are cool, and then there's things that are cool and will be bought. Like, we had this one thing, it was like I feel like I had the idea, but I kind of let some people run with it, and it just died in the prototype stage. And it was a TS100 case, but it was like made of bamboo, and it had like this weird foldy section. And like, not only are TS100s like, you have a TS100, but this case was developed so that you could carry it with you in the field. And the idea changed from like a thing that you could carry with you in the field, so you wouldn't set your TS100 down on a table and melt it, to like a full-on solder station. And it's like, this thing's going to cost like $150 to make. And we're going to be able to sell it for like $18. I'm sorry, but it's just not advantageous to pursue this product. So, there's a lot of things that come with doing it over time and understanding the product production, understanding what materials cost. And there's all these little things that I knew nothing about, but just because I've been doing it for the last 3 years and I understand the manufacturing process a little bit more, I can kind of gauge whether or not a project is going to be worth pursuing in the first the first meeting of bringing it up. I can be like, oh yeah, that's going to work. Let's try to pursue that. Or that's a good idea. Let's go with that. Versus, for example, making injection molded GoPro mounts. Like, we have this thing called the Ethics face hugger, and that to me, it was something that was needed because I genuinely dislike 3D printed parts. The GoPro 7 is the predecessor to the Hero Session 5, and they don't make Sessions anymore, and they're indestructible, but the Hero 7 is very fragile, and people are basically running these stupid 3D printed GoPro holders, but the lens is the highest point, which always hits the ground first, and there's no protection on it. And the only protection that people have is these little things that they slip over the lens that fall off within the first crash, and then your lens is unprotected, and it was just like a nightmare. I was like, how are all of these quad engineers not thinking of this? Like, how do they not understand that when this quad falls, the heaviest part is going to hit the ground first, and it's the GoPro's face? And you got, $500. If you live overseas, you're out $500 when you break a GoPro. You don't have a Best Buy warranty. You can't go to Best Buy and, traded in. Sorry, $400 now. They've lowered the price. But still, that's a lot of money to be breaking and paying to be replaced. So that's kind of where the face hugger came from. And to be realistic, we fucked up the mold on the first go. So you got a $4,000 injection molded piece that is completely useless. So we had to pay another $4,000 to have another mold made because we couldn't modify the first one. So like general startup fee for that product is like well over $10,000, and it sells for like $18, and we have like 1,000 of them. But we're never going to recoup our money on that. But it's just like some products you just got to take a wash on because it's a good product and you want it to happen. So you can't just like fuck up and be like, oh, sorry, got to give up now. Like you might as well do a cool product and put it out there. And a lot of the products we make, there's very little profit margin because it's such a cool product and I want it out in the community, and I'm willing to take a cut on margins because I feel like it's worth it. And I'll give you an example. You know the Power Box? Did you ever see our charger?
I don't think I did, no.
So we have this charger that I made in collaboration with Progressive RC, and it's basically a 400 watt. It's a tiny little Pelican case. It's, I want to say, like maybe 5 inches across by like 4 inches tall, and maybe like 4.5 inches. It's like a super tiny box, right? Well, that box contains a 400 watt AC to DC power supply. It contains an iCharger X6, which is already a $100 charger. And then it's all wired up with DC protection, AC protection. You can plug in like 8 to 36 volts on the input side. You can actually run a parallel setup to run a charger from the charger to another charger and run 2 chargers in parallel and charge multiple things. And it's all super compact, folds all together, has cooling fans, has a power switch on it. And it's something that literally costs us about $350 to make. Like that's how much because it's hand built in California, and we sell them for $400. It's like it's not even worth my time to sell it. I gotta pay for it to be shipped to me. I gotta pay for it to be shipped to you. It's like at that point, I've spent and it's also something where I have to buy it up front and then sell it. It's not something that I can buy one at a time. I gotta buy a batch, and then I'm sitting on product personally. Like I spent 10 grand buying them. And then I'm out 10 grand for 6 months or whatever until I sold whatever it was, like 25 or 30 of them. And then people are like, why don't you sell that for $150? It's like, because it literally costs $350 to make. Right. I'm sorry, but if you tried to make this on your own, you wouldn't even get close, and you'd spend $500. And everyone's like, oh, I can make that in my basement with a cardboard box. And it's like, yeah, you can, and it's going to be the size of a freaking truck. And it's not going to be portable, and it's not going to be as powerful. And so there's a lot of products like that are just extremely small and extremely refined, but it's very expensive to make, and people want it for pennies. And I'm sorry, but that's why we don't make a lot of them. And the only people that have them are the people that understand what it is. So
I could actually use one of those. That would be nice. As I sit here looking at my ammo canister with my charger in it, I'm like, God, I'd love something more compact.
Yeah, when you talk about it, it's like, oh wow, that's actually pretty cool. But
yeah, no, that's a beautiful idea. Like it makes a lot of sense. I can also see why it's so expensive. After this section of our talk, I came away with a real appreciation for ethics. Hearing Mr. Steele talk about it in his own words really makes it come to life. That's for sure. In our next episode, we actually talk about Mr. Steele being a gearhead and about the fact that he's got a lot of cars. So I hope that you guys will like, subscribe, and comment. And just remember, my name's Mike. This is the Michael Rollins Show, and I hope you have a great day.